Welcome to The Herbal Ire, your podcast on all things holistic health, medical astrology, spirituality, herbalism, and so much more. Presented by your host, Ire Atla, medical astrologist, herbalist, and naturopath. Let's dive right into today's topic, love and light. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Herbal Ire. I'm your host, Ire Atla, and I just wanted to come on before the episode starts and give some disclaimers and trigger warnings for those who might need it. Today I am speaking with Zara Bowen. She is an amazing human being who has had a very similar background to mine, which means in this episode we talk a lot about our backgrounds. So there is a lot of mention of religion and religious trauma that we have endured. There's some mention of child abuse and some child abuse acts that we went through as children. There's a lot of talk of birth trauma, that we both had similar kind of like birth stories with our children, and so there is just a lot of different trigger warnings. The episode, I have to say, is absolutely amazing. We touch on a lot of like taboo subjects, I guess, and we just have a really great time talking about them in a very open and honest way. If that's up your alley, then I highly recommend listening to this episode because you will get so much out of it, and you will learn so much about Zara and her services and what she does and how far she's come, and you may end up wanting to work with her. So if this is an episode you think you can listen to and be okay, then I do highly recommend it. But if those are subjects that you are very sensitive to for whatever reason, then I say skip this episode and catch me next week. All right. I will talk to you guys later. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Love and light. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Herbal Ire. I'm your host, Ire Atla, and today I am here with Zara. She's an energy healer, self-love coach, and a boudoir photographer. I'm here to help. She's here to help you love yourself more than you ever thought possible. She specializes in helping with deconstructing from religion, relationships, including the LGBTQ plus community, body love, and self-trust. She is amazing. I'm so glad she's here. Welcome, Zara.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here myself.
I am so glad you were here. So Zara and I met through a networking event for soulpreneurs. I think that was our first meeting, yeah?
Yeah. I've been seeing you in there for a little while, and we ended up chatting and trading some services as we women do.
As we do, that's right. Not the photography part, because unfortunately we're in different parts of the country, but she also does chakra realignment, and that's what we did. I did a medical astrology reading for her. She did a chakra realignment for me, and let me tell you, it was amazing, y'all. So if you're looking for something like that, she's the girl to see. Or if you want just, sexy pictures of yourself to make your self-confidence go through the roof, she's also your girl for that. Yes, her pictures are amazing. She has a Facebook group. Remind me what it's called, because I'm bad with names.
It is. Oh, it has like a really long title. It's like self-love. It starts with self-love something, but
well, I will put it in the show notes, y'all, but definitely go join that group. Right? I can never remember the name of my own group, and I run it. So, don't worry. I totally get it. So, Zara, tell us a bit more. How did you get into like chakra realignment and boudoir photography? They don't seem like they would go together.
Right. They really don't. It's been a funny winding path to end up here and kind of combining the two, but I was a little backstory to help it all come together. I was raised super Christian, and I even went to college. I have an AA in biblical studies. I was an international missionary. Like, I had dedicated my life to spreading the gospel of Christianity, and over time, witnessing the way that a lot of the people I worked with actually treated each other, and a lot of the hypocrisy and a lot of the trauma. I experienced some other traumas in my personal life, and through therapy led me to discover that I had a lot of religious trauma that I hadn't realized was kind of stemming the root of a lot of the things that I was going through. And so I decided to pause going to church and associating with Christianity for a season. I didn't know if I would go back or not. Now we know, spoiler alert, I did not go back. But yeah, so all of that led me to I had PTSD from a birth trauma. My gallbladder was completely shutting down. My body was really, really struggling to be a body. And I was kind of at my wit's end. And I had this friend who was like, hey, I know this like little woo-woo energy healer lady. You should go to her. And so I did. I ended up going, and she was amazing. She changed my life. She taught me so much about energy healing and how to connect with my body and how to connect with the divine, the universe outside of that religious box. And the rest was history. From there, I was like, wow, I want to learn how to do this so I can help other people. Mm-hmm. And so the first certification I ever got was my emotion code practitioner certification, which is a form of energy healing. And that was over 4 years ago now. And I just keep adding different certifications and modalities and learning as I go. And I find that a lot of people really benefit from the chakra work specifically, but I also combine in with that the emotion code. And then from there, as I was helping people learn to love their body, I realized a common thread throughout, especially those of us with religious trauma, is trauma with our body and like feeling good in our body, feeling sexy, body positivity, and all of that. And so it just kind of became this natural unfolding of the more I worked with people. I've always loved photography. I've always loved art and creating. And I just realized there was this space that I could combine the two and that I can help people. So I have a whole self-love journey that I offer. That's 4 months where we go through energy healing sessions together. And then at the end, we celebrate with a boudoir photo shoot. And that doesn't matter if you're near me or not, because all of the sessions are virtual. And then we plan out the photo shoot at the end, and I can come to you or you can come to me. And it's just like the icing on the cake of a gorgeous experience of coming home to your body and your healing journey.
Yes. I resonate with so much of your story, which I think is what really drew me to like, seeking out a friendship with you outside of like the business stuff. Because in case y'all don't know, and I know you know me, I have 5 planets in Scorpio. She has what, 3, 4?
5.
She has a lot. But, yeah. So
at least 4.
We're like at least 4. I don't remember. It's 4 or 5 planets in Scorpio also. So yeah. She and I just really like connected super well on like a deep level. And then we found out after like just that, on top of that, we both had a very similar upbringing with like the religious trauma and the religious like abuse that happened to us as kids. And we were just like, okay. So it was just meant to be from the universe for us to meet each other and become friends for sure. And so now I want you to become friends with her too and get to know her because she's awesome. But that part about, really like leaving that religion and like having to kind of find your way again and learn to love who you are, because in that religion you're taught not to like who you are most of the time, right? It's considered prideful and selfish and sinful to like who you are, and you're literally taught most of the time that you're this sinful, awful, terrible person who is nothing without their deity, and it doesn't teach you to love yourself or even take good care of yourself because there's nothing about you that's likable. And so yeah, I resonate with that. And that whole journey just sounds so similar to mine. So it's great to meet other people that have gone through that because you really understand. And I find people who haven't been through that experience or who are still into one of those religions that we grew up in find themselves not understanding at all like what we went through, and they dismiss our feelings on it a lot.
Right. I think a lot of people who didn't experience them it themselves don't realize the severity of the conditioning that what it
Mhm.
does to your mind and how you interact with everything in your life. Because some of those people, like maybe they've stepped into church once, or they're like, oh yeah, my granny took me to church when I was a kid. It wasn't traumatic for me.
Mhm.
I understand why it was for you, and it's a completely different than just dipping your toe in every once in a while, than
Yeah.
being completely submerged. I mean, my entire home life, like I was homeschooled to keep, as much
Yep.
as possible, like guarded, everything. It was just this tiny little bubble. And there was so little that I didn't know about life outside of,
Mhm.
of that tiny little perspective that I was given. Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
right. People who
Same.
haven't had that experience. I do know some people who try to relate, but but yeah, if you haven't walked through it yourself, it is very difficult. So,
It is. And that was one thing that bothered me for the longest time after I left, was people trying to like discount how I felt because
mhm.
they, like you said, hadn't experienced the same stuff. So of course I was just making it up, or I was being dramatic, or I was, something. There was always some qualifier as to why I was having this experience and they never did. And I think it's just to make them probably feel better in some way, or to stop the cognitive dissonance that's going on in their head as to how could this religion that I love be harmful to other people, like, because they're trying their hardest not to feel that discomfort that comes from that. And I was like the same as you. My parents, they didn't homeschool us at first, but then they eventually did, and then that was that. But like all of our friends had to come from um either the church that we were in, or churches that believed exactly the same, that were in like the vicinity of where we lived. And all of our friends had to come for all of our activities, went through there. Everything we did was somehow tied to the church,
Yep.
and you never got a break from it. It was literally your life from the time you woke up till the time you fell asleep, 24/7, 365 days a year. It was awful. um I think people who weren't, like you said, so immersed in it, or who like went, they were like what we called the Christmas and Easter crowd, right? They just
Yep.
went for a couple of the holidays that, people go to church for, and didn't get the whole, like, this is your entire life. You have to live, breathe, eat, and sleep this religion. Don't truly understand how traumatic that can be for an individual. So they just truly can't understand it. It makes it hard for them.
Right. Yes. And you touched on it earlier too, but the depth of that conditioning of from the time that you were tiny, being told that you're bad, you're sinful, you need a savior, and that all of those things are outside of yourself, right? You need that external validation, that external saving. We're literally taught not to trust ourselves or trust our own
Mm-hmm.
tuition. The heart is evil, all of those things that I've come full circle on now, and in my spiritual journey have realized that those exact same things that we were taught not to trust are the things that actually bring us true healing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, being able to trust your heart, being able to trust yourself, follow your intuition, connect with your body, like literally exactly what the church told us was bad and wrong with us is actually what's healing and like the treasure inside of us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that's been, a long part of my journey too, is getting out of that, and then finding my own path, and being okay with that path, because at first um, it's hard to just accept in general that you want to go a different path, because in my case, at least, I'm not sure how yours work, but in my case, my dad was a pastor in that religion. And so he was even more so like, I don't know how to describe it, but they were just like even more so caught up in it than I think just, like regular church members were in some ways. And they were very much of the opinion that if you don't want anything to do with their religion, or if you leave the fold, unquote, quote unquote, that the best way to resolve that issue was to just disown that person and stop speaking to them until they, I guess, got tired of being alone, changed their mind, and would come back. And
Wow.
so I knew going into it that if I ever chose to leave, that I would more than likely lose every family member and friend and community that I had at all, because that was what they believed, and I knew I'd seen them do it to other people, so I knew they would do it to me. And that made it
Yeah.
really hard for the longest time. I didn't believe it. I didn't go to church anymore. I wasn't following it, but I never said it out loud. I never told anybody else. If I went to visit my parents, I would, go to church with them because I didn't want to lose like the only family that I knew growing up.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's also a very common thread throughout. And some of us haven't fully lost our families. Like my family hasn't disowned me, but they're like guilted and shamed every chance, you know. Um, but that is one reason that I actually started the Facebook group, and one thread throughout that I find with people who have left religion similarly to us is just the loss of community. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
you have been only allowed to associate with people from that path of life and you realize it's not for you anymore, you lose everyone, or next to everyone at least.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was talking to someone about that the other day. I have none of my friends are the same from when I was, even just a few years ago. And some of them, they tried to like stick it out with me, but eventually I think it was more because they had hope that they could like turn me back.
Yeah, yeah, that's very much what I saw, as well. They would surreptitiously come and see me and like make it all like a sneaky event so that nobody else knew they were, not following the rules of the church and completely dissociating with me. But they very much were only doing it not because they truly loved me or wanted to be my friend, but because they felt it was the best way to try to like convince me to, come back and be in that religion again. And uh,
Yeah.
and that just it hurts when you realize that they don't truly like you. They're only doing it because they want you to come back and go back to being the good little controlled individual that you were, and not this person that's making them feel guilty for not leaving too.
Right.
And yeah, it was hard. It was a lot. It's been years now. I don't even know how many years it's been. It feels like forever. um and it's still hard some days. So it gets better when you find like your own family. I've created my own family now, and
Mm.
that helped for sure. You know.
Yes, same for me. Yeah, that is definitely, the farther I get from it, the more I see the extreme depth of fear that's used to control people. And that's what I saw with my friends and even with my family that still try to like convert me back. That's the common denominator really when it comes down to it, is fear. And they'll say things like that: I'm just so afraid for you that you're going to go to hell when you die.
Mm-hmm.
And hell itself is just a massive concept of fear mongering to control people. And so when we
Yes.
really get down to the root of it, the majority of the concepts are just based in people being fearful enough that they comply.
Yeah. Definitely. I 100% see that thread, especially because I was a pastor's daughter. Like, I would see how he would craft sermons to literally like guilt people into doing things or create more fear. And it was just like, what in the world are you doing? Like, this, it never felt right to me because it just felt so manipulative.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
hard too because there's a lot of things in there that when we're raised that way, we're taught that it's like manipulation for the good, right? Well, you're doing the right thing because you're saving
Mm-hmm.
people. And that was that. I mean, I wanted to be a missionary with my life, but it was because I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people
Yeah.
heal. And I love that now that I've done a 180, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm helping people heal just outside of that box that I was stuck in
Yeah.
before. And that's really what I've seen with the people that, I mean, because I still love many people who follow Christianity. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the heartbreaking part, is that they are so convinced that they are doing the right thing. And they're so convinced that they're
Yeah.
helping people and so I also try to have compassion for that, because I realize that I was just like that once. And
Mm-hmm.
so holding space for that and holding space for other people's journeys can be really hard, especially when part of their journey has been hurtful to us. But at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I finally got my one sister back. The other one had never left me, but the other had followed for a long time, of cutting me out of her life because of that. And I finally got her back a couple years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and while they're still really kind of involved in the church, I've noticed that she's taken a huge step back since reconnecting with me and actually listening to my side of the story for once instead of all the rhetoric that she was being told by the church and my parents and everybody else. And they've stopped being as involved to a point, and they've slowed down on that some, and they're kind of stepping back. And I think just realizing that you can, have a relationship with that deity that doesn't involve harming other people or going to church all the time and listening to the rhetoric, that you can just do it at home by yourself. It's not a requirement to, you know,
Yeah.
be a part of the rest of that if you don't want to. And it's been interesting to see, like, some of the changes that have come about from her just realizing. I think because again, it's so much fear mongering. They were just so worried about, like, me going to hell, or my kids going to hell, or me, I don't even know what, just in general, just so scared of everything of what was going to happen to me now, that I think seeing me again, seeing how happy, well adjusted, and like wonderful all of my children are, that I didn't raise them via the Bible methods, and that they're all amazing kids, and just seeing the like awesome person that I've married, who has never been raised in a religious household, who's just a good, kind-hearted, empathetic, caring human being. I think it kind of changed some of their, like, what they were expecting of people who were like heathens, who didn't live in
Yep.
in the church, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, you're all just completely normal. And I'm like, yeah, we're not out worshiping Satan or anything. I and so I think that's really made a huge difference, is really seeing, you know, that you don't have to be associated with that religion to thrive. And it's really kind of helped her a little bit. Um, my other sister and her family are still involved in church. They go to what we would have considered growing up much more like liberal church,
Mm.
like a Southern Baptist was considered liberal in my household. So basically, anything that wasn't what we grew up in was liberal or a cult, and which is ironic. When you grow up in a cult, they say everything else is a cult. But I was like, as he's going off what a cult is, I'm like, wait a minute, we do that, we do that, we do that, we do that. Wait a minute, we get the definition of a cult. As a
Yep.
kid, realizing that, and then bringing that up and saying it, and getting my ass beat for that, like, was,
Oh
you
no.
know, yeah, my parents were not, they did not hold back on the physical abuse at all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just, again, it's, they're allowed to do what they want. They've had a different experience in a way than I had, because everybody has their own perspective of things, and you can be in the same situation and get a completely different experience out of it than the person next to you. Um,
Absolutely.
and as long as they continue to, respect where I am and not try to force anything on me, then, and vice versa. I don't try to force anything. Like, we're good. Like, I can have that relationship. And I still love them. They're still who they are, and I still love them. But it's just been nice to see that some people who grew up in that religion can change and not be as, like, dogmatic about it as the people were that I grew up with.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. I try to hold that lightly now too, because I have met people who call themselves Christians, but are nothing
Mm-hmm.
like the ones that I grew up with. And I think that's very important to remember too, is that a
Mm-hmm.
word can only mean your experience with that word to you. Like, you have your perspective that you associate a definition with, like, what does Christian
Mm-hmm.
mean? So you immediately have a definition that fills in your mind, right? But there has been a lot of change and a lot of spiritual movement that has really brought some interesting varieties of combinations. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had a very like bitter season where I was more judgmental. Like if anybody said they were a Christian, I was just like, "Whoa, you're not for me." And I'm
Yes.
grateful now that I have been able to come more to a space where I will associate with anyone as long as you treat me with equal respect and kindness. Like, sure, great. I don't care what label that you call yourself. If we can, and treat other people with respect and kindness. Cause I was also raised with quite a bit of like homophobia and racism and
Oh
all of
yeah.
those. And those are just hard boundaries for me. And like, if that is in your, in your
Yes.
vocabulary, then you will not be my life. But whatever you
Exactly. Bye. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm with you on that too. That's very much kind of where I've reached to. um, we don't stop our kids from going to church and stuff if they want to go and experience it and see what it's about and decide, what path is right for them. Then we're all for that. And we totally, let them do that. And they've been to a multitude of different types of churches, and pretty
Cool.
much every single one of them has been like, this is horrid. We don't want to go back. but but it's not because we've put anything, I've tried my best not to like demonize, like you said, people who use the label of Christian just because I had a bad experience with them. Not every single person in that group of, people under that same word are the same, right? And so I
Right.
know that. So we've done our best to just like be really open minded about it, and just, we teach about all the religions and you can go your own path. So far, I think it's safe to say that like none of my kids will probably ever go down the Christianity path. And it's not for us saying anything. It's literally them going and experiencing the church for themselves. And I don't know, maybe because of how we raised them, coming back and going, oh my God, why do people go there? Like, they're so mean. All they did was talk about how bad I am. I'm not a bad person.
Yeah.
like, and so I think, they've just, we're raising a different generation than we were ever raised as. And I think that's a good thing for sure. They're definitely much more discerning, I find, in some ways about how people speak to them
Absolutely.
and how they will allow themselves to be spoken to or how they identify.
Yep.
And so that's definitely good. But yeah, so far every church they've tried, they're just like, oh no.
That's funny. My little guy's only 5, so I know that eventually he'll be curious. And we talk
Yeah,
about God, we talk about how different people believe different things. And just like, I think that's really what it is with the majority of people parenting in a similar age bracket to me, is that our children are getting to start outside of the box. And then when they see a box, they're like, oh, why would I climb into the box? Whereas we started out in the box and now we've got them
yeah,
out. Like, oh, there's so much more out here. But we're starting them out outside of the box. And so whenever they see something that's so confining and controlling, I think it's just immediately obvious to them because they have so much more range of perspective than we were ever given.
yeah. It was really evident to me in my mind, what a good job I was doing in, like you said, raising them outside the box. And we were driving somewhere one time, I don't even know where, and our youngest son looks outside and he goes, wow, look at that giant T over there. And it was like a giant ass cross in front of this
Cross.
church. And we just burst out laughing in the car because my husband and I obviously both realized what it was, but all the kids in the back seat were like, wow, why do they have a giant T up there? Like, what does that even mean? Why would you do that? Look, it lights up. That's so weird. Like, they had no clue what that was or why it would be up there like that. And it was just, I was like, okay, I've reached peak parenting now. I have literally made it to the point where my kids are not in any way, shape, or form have been raised in the same way that I was. And that was probably the best thing that they could have ever said.
Meanwhile, by the time I was old enough to recognize the letter T, I had already begged the Lord for forgiveness for my sins.
Mhm. Oh
So,
yeah, I by the time I was 5, I had made a confession of, everything, and been baptized because I was literally told every night from the time that I could remember that if I didn't, that I was going to go to hell, and I'd be separated from my family forever. And a 5-year-old, this thought of being separated from your family forever is like inconceivable and awful. Like, it's completely terrible, that feeling of never seeing your mom and dad again. And it was the only reason that I did it was, again, fear, just like everything else based in there, because I was afraid that I was going to be separated from them forever, and I didn't want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few boundaries that I have really drawn and upheld very firmly with my family because my kid still loves them and like he has no negative point of reference for them. You know, he just
Yeah.
is a child that loves them for being grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles. And I have a very clear boundary that the salvation story is not to be discussed with him
Mm.
because I literally think it's psychological abuse at that point.
Oh yeah.
It's just traumatic across the board, like you just said, being the what's the word? I mean fear, but it's like threat. It's like a threat that you're gonna
Yeah.
be separated from your family. The thought of a man dying in this gory story on a cross because you're a sinner, and the thought of burning in hell, like so many things that should never
Yes.
crossing a child's mind.
Yeah. It's psychological abuse. It really is. Yeah. No, I'm like 100% on board with that, because that is exactly how I feel. And I was very, like, the same with you when my kids were young, very clear with my parents that if you mention anything like this, then we are immediately leaving, and you will be lucky if you ever see us again. Now, we don't see my parents for a multitude of other reasons now, and they've been completely cut out of our lives for, things that actually go beyond just that part of it. But definitely when they were little, I was like, no, nope, not allowed. Sorry. Because of that, I remember how traumatic it was. And I still, am dealing with some of the fallout of the shit that I was told in this religion. In fact, I didn't even know that this was like a thing until I read it in a book. But like religious PTSD, like you said, is like totally a thing. But it's like pretty much across the board dismissed and not even recognized by like the mental health community. I finally saw it in a book, and they started describing what it was, and I burst into tears because it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody acknowledge that what I went through was not only traumatic but could cause PTSD, and that what I had was PTSD and not just me being a whiny baby about shit.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
it is interesting now. I think some people are starting to recognize CPTSD in association with religious trauma,
Mm,
um, which is definitely it's funny when people talk about trauma like PTSD because normally there's one like main specific large event that they have to associate with it, right? Or like,
yeah.
war or something that you're immersed in that is like very obvious that like this is where my PTSD came from. Like for me, I died giving birth to my son, and it was very gory and traumatic and horrible, and I had very clear PTSD from that. But then from learning about it through those venues and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
I started to realize that I think I would probably call my religious trauma CPTSD, which is
Yeah.
complex. And that's where it's more of like a long over time in a
Mm-hmm.
more subtle form that you don't necessarily have this one peak moment that's like, that's what it's from.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, because we were raised that way from like, newborns, it doesn't feel like you said, like the definition of like trauma or a traumatic event for PTSD qualifications, because it's insidious and it's lifelong, and it's you don't have that, like you said, one defining event. And so you kind of can try to like gaslight yourself into telling yourself that you're crazy, that are
Yep.
imagining this, you don't really have that. um so yeah, it was nice though, actually, like seeing that and going, oh my god, that is true, that's what I have, what the heck,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to really work on that,
Yeah.
for sure. So it made a difference for sure.
And I talk so much about how I help people with self-love. And I really think that self-love is more like kind of like a buzzword now. Like everybody talks about self-love and self-care, and but those of us that are specifically come from these backgrounds where, like you said, we like
Hmm.
gaslit and lied to ourselves for years. We're like, oh, this isn't really as bad as we think it is. Things in our
Hmm.
mental mentality were completely shifted. We have to completely start all the way back at self-trust, and we have to rebuild how to even be able to trust and rely on our own thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
feelings, showing up for ourselves. And so
Yeah.
for a lot of us, that is actually the majority of the journey that I help walk people through, is self-trust and like learning how
Mm-hmm.
to trust and be present with yourself again in an honest way, because we've done it in such an unhealthy pattern for so long that we don't even
Yeah.
really realize, yeah, how much of a struggle it is just to be present with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Yeah. And like you said, learning to trust yourself, because you're taught that you can't trust your intuition, you can't trust your heart, you can't trust the feelings in your body because they're all from, an outside source instead of from God or whatever, your religion that you were in, pushed on you. And so you just don't even know how to feel comfortable and confident in your body because you've never like been in your body. I don't know
Yep.
about you, but I did a lot of dissociating as a kid to get through a lot of the trauma. And so coming back into my body was unsafe and uncomfortable, and it hurt, and it was actually almost more traumatic in some ways than like what actually happened to me, because I had to then acknowledge all of the shit that was held inside of my body that I needed to like purge and get rid of.
Yes, that is very common. And it's definitely something to be done gently in a safe space. And that
Mm-hmm.
is where a lot of the chakra work actually started incorporating for me, because that's your root chakra, your
Mm-hmm.
safety, your stability, your connection to this physical experience. And a lot of us that have been through similar experiences, we have very, very low, say, root chakra energy, and we don't feel safe in our body. And it, exactly like you just said, it can be almost like re-trauma to try to connect to the body. And that's why it's important for it to be done in safe spaces with people who have gone through what you have gone through, or who have been highly trained to help you walk through it. I really love somatic therapy also. So if you're listening to this and you are going through a similar experience and you're looking for someone to help you, I would highly recommend a form of energy healing or a somatic therapist. A lot of the talk therapists that I've worked with,
Mm-hmm.
talk therapy, not to say anything like terrible about talk therapy, because talk therapy can be helpful and it does have a space, but talk therapy really like keeps you in your head. It's a lot of
Yeah.
your processing your thoughts, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
talking, really, that's what it is. And for those of us who get stuck in our head and get stuck in mental loops, we
Mm-hmm.
don't need
Yep.
to keep staying in our head. We need help getting into our body so that we can be present and regulate our nervous system and retrain our energy to flow in a healthy way. And so
Mm-hmm.
somatic therapy or energy healing, that is why it was so pivotal for me, and why I believe it's pivotal for a lot of people who are trying to
Yeah.
come back themselves after a trauma like this.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. Um, because yeah, it's so hard. And that was the one thing I initially did was, and I'm sure you probably did too, was go to a therapist for talk therapy, because it wasn't known to me, at least, because honestly, going to a therapist was like massively taboo. That was you not
Yep.
trusting in God, and that was you not, blah, 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 whatever other rhetoric they tried to shove down your
Mhm.
throat. And so I didn't even know who to look for, much less like what else I might need outside of talk therapy. And so talk therapy is where I went. And like you said, I just kept getting stuck saying the same things over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we move past this? Like, I just keep saying the same things and you just keep giving me the same advice. But obviously, that's not working because I keep coming back with the exact same thing over and
Yep.
over again. Now, what do I do? Like, what's beyond this? And so that's when, yeah, I started getting into like energy healing by finding it myself. And so
Hmm.
I don't want people to do that. So that's, part of what I do too, is like getting people to really know their bodies like on a cosmic level, how they're designed, so they understand that how they're designed is absolutely perfect and they're wonderful just how they are. And let them know their body is a safe space. And then I have a network of people I can refer them to for, like, chakra realignment. I have
Yeah.
Reiki people, and I have a girl who does somatic stuff. Like, I have all these people that I can refer them to for the stuff that is not my thing and that I don't want it to become my thing.
Yeah.
I have enough things that I do. Trust me, I don't need to be doing anything else.
I
Um, yeah, the jack of all trades is, I think, definitely like a Scorpio thing, and you can see that in just you and I, how many like things we
a
do.
little bit of this, a little bit of that. I love that we
Yes.
both were like, oh, let's add in menstrual cycle guides. I remember when I heard that about you, I was like, oh yes, we have these like all these little fingers in
Mm-hmm.
different pots.
Yeah, like, I just, especially when something interests me and I know that it can probably help somebody else, I just want to dive deep on it and bring that, knowledge and healing to other people, because I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through when I transitioned out of that religion, when I transitioned from basically dissociating all the time to being more in my body, to really learning to love my body. It was tough, and I had to figure it out on my own, and I don't want anyone else to do that. So, you know
Right.
that's why we do what we do, both you and I. um yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like the boudoir photography stuff, I had one done, I don't know, like metric ton years ago. It was forever ago. I couldn't even tell you how many years ago it was now, but it was a while ago. And I will say I didn't do it for the reasons that you really kind of promote yours, like the self love and finishing
Sure.
that journey of really, I did it because after having my daughter, my youngest daughter, uh, I had a very similar, like, traumatic birth story to yours, only mine actually ended with me actually dying and then bringing me back. And
Wow.
so, because of that, it was just, you understand, the whole thing was like super traumatic. I couldn't even drive past the hospital that she was born in for like probably a good year after she was born, because I would have like an actual panic attack
Yes.
about
Yeah.
something happening to me or something happening to her, right? Like, it was awful. And I had horrible PPD because of it, because of that. And again, the only solutions that they were willing to throw at me is, here, take this pill. I don't want a pill. I want to work through this. Like, give me a solution. And that's when I started finding like Reiki and other stuff that really helped me with that somatic body work. And then I started really getting like into like daily movement of some kind, and I started kind of like lifting weights, and I started doing all the stuff, and I lost a bunch of the baby
Nice.
weight that I'd been holding on to, and I felt really good. And so I had a friend who was a photographer who did all of our family photos all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and that I trusted, I loved, I had worked with her frequently. And I said to her, I said, do you do like boudoir type things? Right? Because I didn't know. And she was like, well, I do for certain clients, and you're one of those ones I would do it for. And I was
Oh,
like, okay. Because we'd been working together for like 3 or 4 years at that point, right? Multiple times a year for different photos and stuff. So we went and did one, and it was really fucking empowering. Like, I felt so like sexy. I felt for once like I was really connected to my body. We did a lot of them outside in nature because that's just like totally my vibe and always has been. And
mm-hmm.
so that just really helped, because I felt like really connected not only to like my body but to the earth and just everything. And
Yep.
when I got those pictures back, oh my god, like, I looked at those going, that is not me. Like, it just didn't
Yes.
feel like, I don't know, it felt so great to
Mm-hmm.
have this. I still have them. They're stashed away on like a drive somewhere. But
Nice.
yeah, like, it was amazing. And so I've always been since then like a huge fan of anybody else going and getting them for whatever reason makes them, feel best in their body. But like, uh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was great. And I really think that, like you said, that self-love thing, it really does, that plays a huge part in it. Because when you're not used to being connected to your body, it's really hard sometimes to see pictures of yourself because it doesn't feel like you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I do have some clients who come to me, they don't go through the whole self-love journey. They're already feeling great, kind of like you described. They're just in a great space where they want to celebrate like feeling sexy. And I'm like, absolutely. I love celebrating Yeah, anything. I'm outside of the box in all categories. I'm also polyamorous and pansexual, and so I think I mentioned that earlier, love supporting the LGBTQ plus community. And so just doing photo shoots with all my, I say girls, gays, and theys. So just anybody who maybe feels like they wouldn't even have a photographer that they would feel comfortable representing themselves in. Like I've done a couple non-binary photo shoots and I absolutely love those. And I just love being a safe space for people to show up in a way that they generally might not feel comfortable. And so I'll often say with the boudoir photographer, I'll also say empowerment photographer, because it doesn't have to be boudoir. Like maybe it's full drag, whatever it is that you want to
Yes.
embody. I am here for it, and I will take your photos and I will cheer for you and we will have the best time.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That sounds just like super great. Like it really does. And I'm with you on that same thing. I think it's really funny that you and I have like so much in common because I'm totally pansexual. I met my now husband in a polyamorous relationship. Um,
Nice.
like and once I kind of like let go of all those preconceived notions that we were taught in like that
Yep.
religion that we grew up in and started really discovering myself, I was like, because I knew from the time I was 7, literally 7, that I did not like only male presenting individuals. I really liked all genders. And
Yes.
my first crush was this girl in my class, and my
Oh,
parents were like really shocked that like I made it all the way through high school and didn't want to date anybody. It's because the person I wanted to date was a girl, and they would have literally like kicked me out of the house, right? And
yep.
so I didn't date anybody, because if I couldn't date her, I didn't want to date anybody. I didn't want to date men. I wasn't like anti men, but I just wasn't attracted to them in high school hardly
Yeah.
at all, right? That actually came a little bit later when I started really kind of, down the road, getting out of that religion and exploring my sexuality more. Because for the most part, I thought for the longest time that I was really just like a lesbian who pretended to like boys because that's what I was needed to do to get through life. But it
Got
came eventually that, it took a while. You know how it does sometimes. It's
yeah.
not always like
It develops.
immediately. Yes. It's not immediately. I am definitely, insert whatever here. So
Yes.
that took some time.
I find it so funny because I didn't admit to myself until I was married in a monogamous relationship with a man that I was like, oh shit, I'm really bi. And it was so funny looking back. Like literally my first kiss was a girl when we were kids. But it was because I convinced her we should practice kissing for the boys.
That totally sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, I remember my first girl crush was Blake Lively. Oh my goodness. Like, it's just so funny looking back in hindsight. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was so obvious. But but I equally liked boys too, though. So maybe that was like part of my confusion. I just was like, everybody's attractive. Like, I find I'll kiss
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
And I had a lot of like confusion around it too, just because I was taught that this was like a choice that you made, right? People chose to be gay and then sin against God.
yeah,
And so when I wasn't actively making the choice at all to like girls and female presenting individuals, I was like super confused as to whether or not this was like a was it real, because I was taught it was something you actively chose and I wasn't choosing it. It was
yeah.
just happening. And I was like, wait a minute.
You didn't pray the gay away hard enough.
They should have been found out. I would have had to go to Jesus camp.
Oh,
Oh no, it was, yeah, exactly. And I was like so upset because I was like, something's wrong. My parents are gonna disown me, they're gonna hate me forever, I'm going to hell. Because of that, because of I was attracted to people that they said I was not supposed to be attracted to, and I was like, well, wait a minute.
hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember I fully kind of like accepted it for myself. One of my first thoughts was like, I'm just so grateful that I'm so femme that I could always pass as straight if I needed to be. And then, I mean, that was years ago now. And in hindsight, that just like makes me so sad that
Yeah.
that was like one of my first thoughts was like, oh, thank God I can like hide who I really am. Like,
Yeah.
geez.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. And I still get like flack sometimes because I am in a heterosexual presenting relationship. And so
Mhm.
people that like, oh, well, you can't really be pan. No, I really am. I just
Yep.
happened to find this person who happens to just very much be my soulmate. And so I'm sticking with him. But um,
Yeah.
we're, we're not monogamous and we're not, you know, he's 100% heterosexual, which is totally fine, but he's okay with me 100% not being heterosexual, and so it works, and that's all that matters, is if the relationship works for you, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about it.
Exactly.
um, I think it's great though that my kids have never grown up with those preconceived notions that, you know, being gay is bad, or, I liking people of the same gender that as you is, going to send you to hell. Because like my oldest daughter came out to us when she was 12. We were painting a room and she was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm gay." We were like, "Okay." And we just kept painting and she was like, "That's it?" We were like, "What did you?" My husband goes, "What'd you want me to do? Throw paint on you? Scream and yell?" He's like, "We don't care." Okay. And he goes, and honestly, he goes, "What kind of parents would we be if we hadn't already noticed that and we're just waiting for you to tell us?" And she's
Oh,
like,
we're waiting for
"You
you to
knew."
notice.
Yeah. She was like, "You knew." And we're like, "Girl, you've only talked about girls for like ages. We're not blind or stupid, like." And then my youngest daughter comes up to me, I don't know, this was a few months back, and she's like all upset. I mean, like all upset, like crying, snotting, tear, all this. And I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" Because I'm thinking like she felt like got hurt, she's something wrong.
Yeah.
She is crying because she is upset that she doesn't know if she's gay or not, and she wants to be gay so bad, so like she's mad that she's not sure if she is. And I was like, I don't even know what to say to this, right? Because I'm like, so I'm like hugging her and I'm like, "It's okay, baby, you either are or you aren't, you don't really get a choice." "I know, but I want a choice. I want to be gay like you and Sissy because it's so cool and awesome and you guys are great and I want to be just like you." And I was like, "Okay." And I don't know what to say. What do you say to that? It's great
Oh
though.
my
I mean,
gosh, forget blondes have more fun. Queers have more fun.
yes. And so she's like, I said, "Baby, not everybody knows what their sexuality is when they're a preteen."
Yeah.
She's a preteen. Like, you don't know. I didn't know until I really, really hit puberty. And like at 7, I kind of knew I liked girls a lot, but it wasn't like a fully developed feeling, right? Because you're
Sure.
7. It
Yeah.
was when I hit puberty, that's when I really knew that I was like, "Okay, this is like a thing," and it stayed. And I told her that, but she's just absolutely convinced that if she does
Oh,
not turn out to be gay in some way, that she is going to just have a miserable life.
so funny. Yeah, and I love like that with my child. We always talk about like there isn't a right or a wrong. It's
Mm,
you know,
it is what it is.
yeah. Happy Pride, by the way. I
Oh,
realize today
yes.
starts
I
Pride
forgot.
Month,
It's
so
June
it's
1st.
perfect time for us to be having these conversations.
It is. It is. And I honestly wish that everybody could have a coming out story like my daughter had, where we literally were just like, "Yeah, whatever," and went back to painting. Because I know that's not the case. And I still,
Oh,
to this day, have not come out to my parents because A, we're not speaking to them anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter. And B, even if we were, I know that they still would have a horrible reaction and would completely, again, do the whole "we're disowning you" thing. And I just don't want to go through that emotional trauma, even at almost 40 years old. I don't want to go through that. So I'm
yeah.
not. Everybody else in my life
I,
knows.
yeah. I have two really great partners. I've been with each of them for about 2 years now. And one of them, well, and actually both have similar religious traumas in the way we were raised, which is funny. But one of them, we were talking about that, just the whole concept of coming out and how it has definitely become this like beautiful thing, right? That we can celebrate
Mm-hmm.
Pride Month and that people can be proud about coming out. But on the other side, in some ways, it's created pressure for
Yeah.
people who we don't want to, or
Yeah.
maybe not the best emotional choice to. And it's almost created this societal pressure of like, oh, why
Uh-huh.
have you come out? Why are you hiding? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like
Mhm.
anything else in life. If you don't want to come out, if there are people you don't want to tell, you don't have to, like you have
Exactly.
that boundary for your mental and emotional health. And so, yeah, there are certainly people that unless something drastically changes in this lifetime, I will not be sharing with them. And
Yeah.
that's literally just for my own sanity. Like,
Mhm.
no
Oh,
other reason.
1,000%. Like 1,000%. My daughters are, and all my kids, but are very like open about their sexuality and that kind of stuff. But again, that's the choice that they've made, and they're growing up in a generation where it's more, like accepted and okay to do that, and
Yeah.
people aren't being treated as bad as they used to be. Like there's definitely a shift happening where, you know, people are more accepting of that and understanding of that, and things like that. Now, of course, there's still groups that are not, and I 100% understand that, but there's definitely a shift happening where it's, it is changing for a lot of the community. But again, like you said, you don't have to come out at all ever to anybody. It's, it's your story, and you're not required to tell it to anybody if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That doesn't make it more or less valid who you choose to share with. Yeah.
exactly. And it doesn't make you more or less gay if you don't tell somebody that you're gay.
Very, very true.
Right? Like you don't have to tell somebody for it to be official, y'all. Just, let me tell you that. You can be gay and never tell a single soul except for the person you're dating.
If you really need to tell somebody, you can tell one of us. You can just
We
message.
won't care. We'll keep painting the walls.
Oh man.
Yeah, but it's great. It's great to see that despite all of the traumatic things that we have gone through, that we have made a decision not to repeat that and break generational patterns and traumas and raise our kids in ways that are much more like conscious, gentle parenting, and just loving them for who they are, and not trying to make them fit into a box. That was part of what I didn't like about my childhood too, is that I felt compelled to go be like the square peg in a round hole, because what I liked and wanted and who I was wasn't compatible at
Mhm.
all with what
Yep.
they said that, female presenting individuals needed to be. Right, I
Yeah.
was supposed to want to get married to the first male that I met at like 18 and be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen for the rest of my days and be happy doing that, and I hated every single thing about that.
Yep.
I was like, I don't want any kids, I don't want a guy, I don't want to cook. I don't want to do any of that. Can't I just go outside and fix a car? Like, what the hell, y'all? And so it was bad. And so I was like, I'm going to do anything in my power to not be that. And ironically, it's like really funny. I now have 4 kids, and I love to cook, and I cook constantly and bake. And while I don't want to be pregnant ever again, let's just put that out there. That last pregnancy tried to murder me. No thanks. I just, yeah, it's like it's come 180 for me, but it's because I think it's because I made that choice, and it wasn't something that was being
Right.
forced on me. I don't like feeling, this is part of my cosmic design, y'all. I absolutely detest being told what to do or feeling like
Yep.
I'm being pressured into something that I don't want. That's all that Scorpio energy for you.
Absolutely. I can relate strongly.
Yeah.
That's one of the things too that I absolutely love helping people heal is the relationship between their masculine and their feminine energy. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people hear masculine and feminine and immediately associate gender roles. So sometimes I'll instead say yin and yang, which a lot of people, you immediately can see the symbol come to your mind, the half white, half black swirl. And
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly how our bodies are, in that we have a combination of both energies, and they are equally important, and we need them to survive and thrive, and
Mm-hmm.
outside of the gender roles that our society has tried to press on us. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's
much to unpack. I could
oh yeah. And
just
that's true too. And part of what I do is really helping to rebalance that masculine and feminine, that active and passive energies in your body, right? Not
Yeah.
Nobody can be 100% active all the time. This is how you burn out, right? If all of your energy constantly is active, eventually you're going to hit a brick wall where you just can't go anymore. And then you're going to be forced to rest by your body, and potentially in a way that you don't want to rest, like in a hospital, or, convalescing in bed for 3 months. And, you're going to be very, very, very upset that this is the way that your body has chosen to make you go into some of that passive energy, right? And rest and relax and just be for a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I find that just with the way our society is here, at least in the US, I can't speak to anybody else's, but they want everybody to be on all the time. If you're not taking your kids to 17 activities, you're a terrible parent. If you're not working, 70 hours a week for that terrible company that's not paying you anything and really doesn't value the fact that you work 70 hours for them a week, then again, you're a terrible person. If you're not driving a 2-hour commute to get to that job, then there's something wrong with you there. And if you are driving 2 hours, there's something wrong with you there. Like, there's never a win-win situation in any of this, but it's
Yep.
constantly about being on. Like, if you're not spending every weekend taking your kids to 7 different sports activities, then what kind of parent are you even? Like, I've literally been told that because my kids do like a lot of activities and extracurricular stuff because they need rest. They're kids. They don't need to keep going. I don't need to keep going. There's no way in hell I want to drive anybody to 17 different activities throughout the week. I don't even want
Yeah.
to drive me to like the grocery store. I don't want to drive you to baseball 7 times a week, Um, and so I've really worked hard on, teaching my kids it's okay to stop and take a break. It's okay to relax. It's okay to listen to your body. It's okay to not be going 24/7 just because someone else says you have to. And I actually see them following that, doing that, and it's great.
Aw,
But
love that. And that rest doesn't have to be earned. That's what we're
oh
we're
god,
taught.
no.
You have to earn the rest, but that's your baseline. Like, your body needs rest. You don't have to earn it.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a want, it's not a reward, it's an actual need. In fact, I think it's if you look at like the Maslow's chart hierarchy of like needs, like rest is
Yeah.
actually above going and doing. Like it's
Really.
higher in the scale of like things you need because your body needs rest before it needs you to go be, working yourself into the grave. Um
That's I haven't looked at the hierarchy of needs in a
it's been a
long
while, so I may have it
not
confused,
back
but it is
college
on
psychology class.
right? Oh, I took that so long ago. I could not even tell you half of what the class said. I feel like the really old person, and every time anybody starts bringing it up, they're asking, "What'd you learn in your class, dude?" I don't know. I was like 18 when I took that, and I'm nowhere near 18 now.
Oh man, those are some of the only ones that I remember because I actually took quite a few psychology classes because I actually at one point wanted to become a psychologist, but of course it was Christian psychology, and that was part of the like when the red flags started popping up for me, and I was like,
Yeah,
wait a minute. So it's funny because I feel like I've come into I have a similar capacity now, like what I do and how I help people. It's just not
mm-hmm.
in the same doesn't have the same label. But yeah, I've always
Mm-hmm.
been about psychology. I love a
Yeah,
lot of it.
yeah. And I could be wrong about that, Maslow's, but I know rest is on the hierarchy of needs list because your body needs
Sure.
rest. Like it's if you don't get enough of it. In fact, if you don't get enough of it, like you're constantly in your sympathetic nervous system, which is like the fight and flight, keep you moving and whatever nervous system instead of the parasympathetic nervous system, your digestion gets fucked up, you gain weight, you don't sleep well, you don't feel well. Like there's all these things that start deteriorating in your body because it's not made to be on all the time. In fact, it's made to be more often in the parasympathetic nervous system, which we call the rest and digest nervous system. Because when you're in that fight and flight, you're not digesting food and stuff, right? Because your body needs quick energy to get somewhere because it feels like you're under attack. And so it's wanting to get you out of the situation. So your cortisol levels are higher, which makes you feel
Yep.
snacky, but you want to snack on carbs only because carbs are quick
Energy.
fuel for your body. Yeah.
Yep.
And or sugar, right? You crave sugar because your body is like, I need more fuel for running through this really stressful event. And so you start craving those things. And there's nothing wrong with carbs in general, right? Carbs are good. You need carbs. Your body needs them. They're the quick energy source. Carbs are good for y'all, especially if you have a uterus and ovaries. You need carbs to create proper hormones. That's another soapbox for another day. So carbs are not the devil, but you can't live on carbs alone. Period.
Yeah.
You need protein and fat in there too. And so because of that, though, you tend to crave that a lot because and then when your body's in like a fight or flight, it's not going to sit there and take time to really properly digest the food and extract the nutrients it needs because it just needs that quick fuel, right? So it's going to take the quickest thing and then the rest of it's just going to, pass through and you're not going to get all the nutrition from it that you need. And then you start getting nutritional deficits, which leads to a host of other problems. And so part of what like I teach in my program really is like getting back into like that rest and digest system, right? Like, let's go over here and just rest more. Like, we don't need to be going all the time. It's okay to stop and take a break. Uh,
Yeah.
because of that,
I love that. You sound like me. I've gone on that rant to people many of times. I'm like, people don't realize how much having daily cortisol just our society rewards stress. Like,
mm-hmm.
you're doing
It's a
something.
badge of honor. If you don't
Yeah.
run around talking about how stressed you are, like, I don't know, 30 times a day to somebody, then you don't count as a person in our society. Sorry. I mean, they make it like a badge of honor to walk around about. I got to leave work today at this time. I got to drive 2 hours home. I got to go grab so and so from school. And then we got to go over here. Whereupon we're eating fast food on the way because I have to get him to baseball, which is a 6 hour, practice. And then we got to go home and do homework and then to bed and then back up at why are you doing that to yourselves? That sounds miserable. When people at work start talking to me about that, I'm just like, my eyes glaze over and I'm like, why? They're like, what do you mean why? And I was like, why are you doing that to yourself? Like, are your kids even happy? Do they want to be doing 17 activities that are exhausting them? And like, did you ask them? And they're like, well, kids need activities. Kids need an activity. And one
Yeah.
one outside of school. I'm a firm believer in one activity at a time. We're not doing 17, we're not doing even two. We're doing one activity at a time until you no longer decide you want to do that activity for whatever reason, and then we'll go to a new activity.
Cool.
They don't need no one needs that. I don't want that either as their parent. But yeah, no, we really do. People are
Beings,
taught to
not,
wear it.
oops,
Yeah.
sorry. We're human beings, not human doings.
Yes.
The same.
Yes. And people just society doesn't like promote that anymore, like you're literally called lazy if you just can't work like a 70-hour work week and you know take your kids to 17 activities and cook all of the meals and be healthy at home and you know what I mean, like, oh, they're like, oh, you're lazy. No, I'm not. There's
Mm,
nothing wrong with resting. Well, we have surpassed our time like usual with these conversations, y'all, um so tell everybody, Zara, where they can find you. So if they want to come get a chakra realignment or do your self-love journey or even hook up to get a boudoir shoot, where do they go?
Yes. So online, I am the Conscious Lotus. So my website is theconsciouslotus.net. Make sure you get the net right. And that can kind of actually connect you to everything else. Or if you want to find my socials on Instagram, I am the _conscious_lotus or Liberated Lotus Photography. And again, if you go to the Conscious Lotus one, it connects you to everything else.
Awesome. I do highly recommend a chakra realignment session. She was amazing at that. I felt wonderful after. Also a lot of emotions, but that was because, as usual, my root chakra is very, very stubborn and likes to try to stay closed off all the time. So opening that does, of course, create a lot of emotions. I hold all of my issues down there.
Yep.
um yes, but it was really great. She's really good at it. She makes you feel safe and like not vulnerable and like it's okay to share what you need to with her. So highly recommend. And I'm pretty sure her photography shoots would be the same because that's just who Zara is as a person.
Thanks so much.
You are welcome. It was lovely getting to chat with you today. I will catch you later, and I will catch all of my listeners later. Love and light. That's it for another great episode of The Herbal Ire. Tune in next week for more valuable content with your host, Ire Atla.